Hello everybody, me again, back with some more drivel for you, I guess. This is going to be a video all about grinding valves. I've got the engine valves and the cylinder head I'm talking about, and it's kind of really aimed at newbies, the sort of people new to this sort of thing who fancy having a go, and they may have seen it in magazines, they may have seen it talked about on YouTube and stuff, but I just thought, you know, I'd cover it here. There's those of you that are new to the hobby of engine building or whatever, and there's those of you that like to see everything going on. You want to see every single nut and bolt build of my Land Rover. So it's sort of, you know, sort of suiting everyone really. But if you are sort of a familiar engine builder, there's really nothing to see here for you. So you may as well just switch off now, because I'm not going to show you anything you don't already know. So what we're going to look at is, after the head's stripped down, how we keep our parts, how we keep them all separated, and make sure everything goes back the same. Talk about cleaning the head a bit, you know, because I don't think I covered that at all in any previous videos, not future videos. And I'll show you the head, I'll show you the valves, I'll show you everything, and then we'll go through the lapping procedures and the cautions and the do's and don'ts. So without further ado, let's get to the bench and have a look at what we've got. This bloody Ford stuff. Let's look at this Ford engine. Yeah, right. So when you strip down a head, you need to keep everything as it came out. So here we've got, you can see we've got all our valves, and you can see on here I've written 1 inlet, 1 exhaust, 2 inlet, 2 exhaust. Okay, so we've got our inlet valves here, exhaust valves, inlet valves, exhaust valves, and then the relevant springs and retainers. Now if you get the springs mixed up, that's not such a massive thing. The big thing is not to mix up these retainers. You can see in there we've got the collets, there's one there. You need to keep those with the valve they came off of. They would have bedded in together, and especially on a high mileage engine, they would have bedded in together. You need to keep them together. Don't go mixing those up at all, ever. The only exception to that, if you really have to mix them up because you've dropped everything or something, if you've got a Japanese engine, it all tends to be exactly the same. They seem to be way above anybody else at building engines. But with something like this, with a Ford, I would definitely not risk changing these collets. So all this stuff is cheap as chips to buy you anyway, I think. So here you can see we've got the valves. I did a video on cleaning these up. That's just some oil on there. That's nothing. So today we're going to lap them, and you can see that we've got some, if this bloody camera will focus, you can see there we've got some pitting, and this is all down to this EGR crap, pushing all the dirty, moist, you know, whatever, condensated exhaust fumes back through the intake with all the, you know, associated acids and all that. And if you go back and have a look at my video, January 2020, I did a video on how to clean these, and you'll see the kind of state they were in when I first started. If I think I'll put a photo up now, but yeah, they were terrible. So and then we've got a cylinder head over here, and you can see it's all nice and clean. Inlet ports cleaned up pretty well with paraffin. Exhaust ports obviously was baked on. The thing to use in that is Mr. Muscle Oven Cleaner, and that will actually dissolve all the deposits. There's a very, very rough finish in these castings. It's so rough you can almost feel like you could cut your fingers on it. If I can show you there, you can see it's really, really rough, and there's also a definite swirl been cast in here. So be careful what you're doing if you're going to start cleaning your ports out and stuff. Be very careful that you don't start, you know, changing. I was going to port this and everything, but I'm tempted not to. I've just basically cleaned it all and everything. I don't really want to be messing with the characteristics and end up with an uneven engine. Basically because I don't know what I'm doing. With a petrol engine I do, but not with this, not with diesel. I don't know what I'm doing, so I decided to leave it. But it is a very, very cheap, nasty casting. All the tapped holes have got swarf in the bottom, which is normal. And you can see on here we've got the 2.4, so if you've got a 2.2, it'll probably have 2.2 cast there. But yeah, just make sure, tap all the threads, make sure the threads are all cleaned out. On the other side, make sure all your bearings look good. You've got these cam bearings here which are running directly in the head. Make sure they all look good. If any of those are badly scored, you probably start looking at another head, to be honest. And also be very careful with moving your cams. If you tip them up, you will snap these corners off here, so be very careful of that. Got dowels in here which have got a slight amount of rust on. This has actually been through the dishwasher, believe it or not. And we've got our valve guides there which are all looking nice. Be careful not to break them off as well because they're quite brittle. So there we go. That's that. Make sure all the seats for the injectors down in there are nice and clean as well. They need to be spotless liquid on the bottom to make sure the injector seals, and also all the lands where the bolts pull down, make sure they're all nice and not torn up, and all good. This engine is rather unusual with its valve guide seals. Valve guide seals generally press over the top of the valve guide. With this one, they're actually the spring seat as well, so they just literally fall on. So that's nice. You don't have to have any special tools to pull them off. So there we go. So let's get on with the lapping. What I'm going to use is this stuff here. This is ancient now. The Holt's valve lapping paste. It comes in basically 2 pots. If I just show you here, it comes in 2 different pots. You can see there's the coarse and there's the fine, and I'll talk about that more in detail. You used to get this in an old tin. If you see them in the tin, I'd avoid buying them, because what they had was a tin with a blank in the middle, and then you had a press-on cap on either end, and you basically turn it over for the coarse, and then this way up was the fine. The trouble is, when you stored it in the garage, any residual oil or whatever would run out of the bottom one. So you think, well, I'll store it on this side, and then it'll run out of both of them. So there's the rain again now, lovely. So yeah, if you're going to get the, if you see the paste, if you get it in a box with 2 plastic containers like this, you're much better off with that than the old metal tin with it opening either end. I used to have one, and I think I threw it away because the course was at the bottom and it just totally dried out. The oil just ran out of it. It became like a dry grinding paste. So I think I threw it away from memory. So these plastic pots are much better. So what I'm going to do is get the bench clear, get the head on the bench, and we'll start doing the lapping. I also need these tools here. Some people use electric drills. I don't agree with that. I'd rather do everything by hand. But as you can see, these are quite old and perished, so I don't know if they're going to fall apart, and I need to buy a new one. So the video may last a few minutes, but it might be a few days for me, because they might fall apart and I'll have to get a new one. So we shall see. So let's get to the bench and go from there. Okay, so head sled flat on the bench. This is what we want. Nice clean piece of cardboard, save scratching any of the mating surfaces. And then what we're going to do is pop the valve in. I've got the second one here because it was just the first one that came out of the box. And you can see that straight away, problem. Okay, the valve is hitting the bench before it hits the seat. Now, on this head, it's quite obvious. But on some heads where you've got the valve gear up in the, the rocker arms and stuff, you can end up actually just being fooled, and you might have the tip of the valve just touching the bench. So there you think you're lapping it, and you may actually not be doing it properly. So you need to make sure you lift the head up onto a couple of blocks or something, like I've done here. Okay, away from the dowel so it's nice and solid. You don't want it all rocking around. And you can see there the valve has gone down. If you put your hand underneath and if you have a look, you can see that it's got a good few millimetres of clearance. Now, you need to make sure you've got that clearance, because you don't want to be, if it's just touching the bench, as I say, excuse me, you'll think you're doing the valve and you're not. You're just sort of lightly skimming it, and all the pressure is actually going into the bench. So you need to make sure you've got plenty of room there. And I need to try and get it up now. Right, so I know now that the valve's okay and it's not hitting the bench. So and when I drop it in, I've got a good sounding sort of solid, a solid sort of ring to it, like that. Okay, so that way we know we're good. So this is number 2. I'm going to start with number 1, like so. So we'll get a rag and we're just going to make sure we clean the valve off, because what we don't want is anything to stick to the stem. Now, if you want to do a little bit of light oiling on the stem, you can, but there is actually clearance in there, and if everything's all clean and cleared out, it doesn't necessarily need to be oiled. But what you want to do is make sure that it's clean, make sure that this area around here is clean, because you don't want any paste to actually stick to anything. If you get a bit of paste on the stem, as you go down, you'll start grinding the valve guide and the stem as well. You don't want to be doing that. So all we're going to do is put our valve there. And I know this is number 1 because it's the first one out of the box. If I take the camera around here, you can see, as remember I said 1, 2, and then we've got the exhaust, and then 1, 2, and this is cylinder 1. So, and it's showing an arrow there showing front. So, make sure everything's clear, because you may sort of take it all apart one day and think, oh, it's so bloody obvious what I mean, and then you'll come, in this case, this is like 15 months later, if I wasn't so obvious, I might not have remembered what I'd done. So now this valve is very good. If we look at it here, we can see, come on camera, focus, we don't really have any pitting on there, and there's no real pitting on the seat. Now these valves have got extremely wide seats. I don't know if that's typical of diesel or if it's just this particular engine. So because this one is really good, I'm going to start off with the fine. So I'm just going to take, this is the fine paste. You can see it's just like a very fine grinding paste. You don't need very much. Okay, so I've just got some on my finger there, and I'm just going to dab 4 little areas like that. Okay, that's all I need to do. And then with a rag, I'm going to come over here and wipe my finger off, and I'm going to keep that rag separate from everything else, because I do not want grinding paste getting anywhere other than on the valve itself. Okay, now because it's a larger valve, we can use the larger seat. I'm just going to wet that. Now this thing here basically goes on, and it's just like a suction cup. So you can see that sucks its way to the valve. Now what I'm doing now is just distributing the paste around, and then you'll see some people doing this with a drill. I don't agree. I think you need a backwards and forwards motion. So what you're going to do is, if you listen, I'm lifting it during the process. And when you lift it, you know, if you got if you had some sort of strawberry jam on here, as you lift your hand away, it would all sort of spike and distribute. And that's what I'm doing, is redistributing the grinding paste. So you can see there, it's going round. And you'll basically hear when it's done, because the sound of the grinding paste, you can hear there. Here it sounds a bit smooth. As soon as I distribute it, hit the rough again, then it goes smooth. Rough again, it goes smooth. Okay, so there we go. Now lift the valve out and make sure you don't touch the paste on the stem. Okay, and now we can take our cloth, which has got the paste on it. We can rub that around like so. What we're looking for is a uniform, this has worked out really well actually for the camera. What we're looking for here is a uniform grey line around the valve, like you can see there, almost like it's got grey primer on it. Okay, now we can see we've got there's a silvery spot there. Can you see it? Just there, right in front of you, there's a silvery spot. So I need to grind away until that's gone, because that's the start of a pit. That's the starting of a pitting. So I just want to make sure that's gone. So I'm going to go back in. No more paste. Just go back in. Again, redistributing the paste as I go. And what we want is a uniform grey line with no breaks in it, nothing. If you find that when you do this, you have got, see I touched the side there, so I need to be really careful that I don't get any paste in those grooves or on that stem. What we need to be careful of, sorry, getting ahead here. What you need to be looking for, if that grey line on your valve is only on half of the valve, say on half of it here, it means your valve is bent, or well, it does mean your valve is bent. I was going to say it means your seat's wrong, but it doesn't. So if you find that you've got the grey line is only on one side and this side remains untouched, you probably want to look at getting your valves ground or even replacing the valves, particularly if they're the helium filled valves. If it's bent, there's a chance it could break, so it's best to replace them. If you find you've just got a small area that hasn't cleaned up, go in with the coarser paste and clean it up like that. But really you should be looking at getting your valves ground and getting your seats cut perhaps, because if the valve has been running in the engine for a few thousand miles bent, it may not have done the seat much good. So and the way you'll find that is you'll see a loss of compression when you do a compression test. But there you go, you can see that silver mark is still there, so I'm just going to have to keep going until I can get rid of it. That is actually a little corrosion, little spot in there, spot of a corrosion. So I'm going to keep going, and then I'll come back when I'm done. Right, so we can see on here now, after, I don't know, two maybe three goes at it, same sort of length of time as I showed you, with the coarse paste, we've got rid of those spots. So that's all done. There was actually two of them there, right next to each other, so they're gone. So now that's not going to give it a chance to start any pitting again. So there we go. Now, because I've been using coarse paste, I've cleaned the valve off. I haven't cleaned any solution, I've just wiped it off. I've wiped off the seat with a rag. I've just gone around my finger just to make sure there's no coarse paste in there. And then we're going to give it a final lap with some fine paste. We don't need too much. So we'll just put a couple of little spots on here. Nothing too much. Okay, and then we'll drop the valve in. Just like so. You know, fingers off. Get the tool on like that. And then it's absolutely vital that you get any coarse paste out, because what you're trying to do here is smooth out the finish, because the coarse paste will kind of leave it almost like a record, you know, like a vinyl record surface, grooves, and this will take all that out. So again, redistributing the paste as I go. There we go, we can have a look at that, and you can feel when you pull it away, it's really stuck to it, where the seal is so good. The interference has kind of got stiction holding it together. So there we are. So we can see now that on that valve we've got a very clean, it's bloody camera to focus, very clean, very uniform grey ring without any interruptions, without any spots in it or anything. So there we go. Now that was a fairly simple one. Some of these with the pitting and that are going to take a long time. You could be spending sort of 3 hours doing this, but believe me, it's worth it in the end, especially if you're getting rid of your EGR. Then you know it's worth doing, because I'm sure it's the EGR that causes all this trouble. You know, the materials that the valves and the seats are made of are absolutely fine. The seats are sintered. So there we go. Obviously somebody's just walked past the house, how dare they. And if I can get the camera onto the seat, I can show you we've got the same sort of thing there on the seat. Okay, you've got this lovely uniform grey pattern. Okay, now I'm looking at that now. You can see some dark marks up here. So I may actually go over this again, because it looks like we do have a little bit of pitting in the seat. But we'll have a look under a magnifier and see what that is. If that could just be discoloration in the material, or it could be actually pitting. So may need to do some more with the course. But there we go, guys. I'm not going to bore you with showing you anymore. I'll come back when we're done, or if I don't get finished tonight, then we'll come back when we're half done. So see one more thing. Cleanliness with this is absolutely imperative. I'll tell you a little story. A guy I used to work with many years ago at Rolls-Royce built a hot rod engine, and he did all this and then built his head, didn't clean the head out, ran his engine. It was an American V8, I can't remember what it was now, it was like a 351 or something, 302, and basically ran his engine, and it ran gorgeously for about a day, and then it was just flat as a fart, had like very low compression. When he stripped it down, I remember he brought some parts and showed me, because we were at Rolls-Royce, we're all engineers and interested in seeing stuff. It wasn't like, you know, bring an apple for teacher. And I couldn't believe my eyes. It had actually, the cylinders had worn, and the piston rings had worn to the cylinders, obviously, and they had loads of flats on them, and it was almost like instead of being a circle, it was like, you know, 50 flats. Sort of 50 flat sections going around the bore. It was just absolutely destroyed the bores. I think he managed to salvage it because he didn't have too many oversized bores on his engine, but yeah, the grinding paste destroyed his engine. So like I say, you can't be too careful. I'll probably wash this all out in paraffin. I may even put it through the dishwasher again afterwards, just to absolutely make sure there's none of this paste anywhere, because all you want is a couple of bits of that coarse grit. I mean, if I show you this, you can see how coarse it is. I mean, it's like bloody sand. You get that in there, you really don't want that in your engine. So yeah, can't be too fussy with the cleanliness, guys. I've run into a bit of a problem. I've got a little magnifier here. This is like a little 5:1 or 5 times magnifier, so I can put this over the lens and I can bring you in and I can show you the problem we've got. Now this is minor, this one, but you can see that on the outer edges of the seat we've got some corrosion, which is going to cause us an issue. That'll just corrode again and just get worse. So these seats need to be cut. And then we come over here, and this is even worse on the exhaust. You can see it's quite bad. The actual area of no contact is probably more than the area of contact. So they need like a minimal cleanup. Now luckily a friend of mine has a race engine, he's a race engine builder, so he has a Rover seat cutter, so he will be able to cut these seats for me and they will be beautifully done. Now my issue is, the manual says this head is not rebuildable. Yeah, right. In this throwaway society, I can't see why we can't take sort of 5 thou at depth out of these seats, maybe 10 thou. It's got hydraulic lifters. If I do have an issue, I'll have to shim up the lifter galley. That's all. So we shall see. But or I can grind 10 thou off the end of the valves. However deep we go in here, I can take the same amount of material off the valves. So there we go. So there we are. Wish me luck, and I'll come back with another video and show you when it's all done and ready to go back together. Okay, so we are jumped forward about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks now, and the head is all done. I couldn't get the seats cut because Tim didn't have the correct cutters to do them, or the correct guides, because what they do when they cut seats, they use the valve guide as the guide to keep everything on centre. And these are really worse side. They're like 6.994. They're sort of under 7mm. So, you know, new tooling for his valve cutting machine would have been very expensive. So it's not one of these cheap Chinese things. It's actually a professional, you know, I think it's a Surdy machine. So anyway, so what we're going to do now, we are going to carry on and fit the valves. As you can see, I've done most of them already because they're very awkward to do, because this head can't be stood up on its side. What you would normally do is have on its side and leant back, and you could work on it, because to do the valves you need this face up. So what I've done, I've put all these in so that I can have it on the bench overhanging the end, so I can sort of show you what's going on. So basically, for the newbies out there, what you've got is your valve sits in a guide which is in the head, and that's normally phosphor bronze or sintered or whatever, and then the spring goes over. Well, the first thing it goes over is the, I'm not going to put it on because I don't want to damage it, but you've got the actual seat and the seal that goes on top of the valve guide. That stops the oil leaking down. Generally, if you've got an engine that smokes on startup, it's usually the valve seals that are gone. And this one actually forms the spring seat as well. So the spring will sit on that, because you don't want the spring just sitting on aluminium. It would fret it away. So basically, you put the valve guide over, which you'll see in a minute. Then the spring would go over. Then the retainer goes on. You make sure it goes the right way, and that would sit like that. Okay, and then you've got these two little collets that go on. I think they call them, in the States they call them keepers, I think. So that's the they go on like that. They're split in half. So you can see those there. Okay, so they're split in half, and then that retainer will go up, and you can see, because it's a cone, now the spring is being forced up against there, and it can't come out. Well, one hopes it can, because they do fall out, but very, very rarely. So that's what it's all about. Now, I'm going to show you how to do one. It's not going to be very detailed because I can't get the camera in close enough, and I may have to edit some swearing out because they can be a bit of a bastard to do. So the first thing we do is do the inlet. This is the inlet side here, I believe. Yes, of course it is. This is the inlet side here. So we'll do this one here. So we push that guide over there like that, and then we give the valve a good coat of oil. Now the oil will lubricate the guide, it will stop it corroding while it's stood around, and also it helps to stick the collets in when we put them in. So I'm just going to slide the valve up from underneath. I can see down through the guide, I can see the end of the valve, and there it comes up there. Now when you get to the end, give it a twist so you get some oil on the seal, and then just push it up through. and that's it, and then the seal will hold it in place. So we can drop the spring on, drop the retainer on, something like that, and then we take our spring compressor. Now this thing comes from Clark, okay, and as with a lot of Clark hand tools, it's garbage. It's very, very awkward to use, but it's the only thing I've got that will get around this head, because you've got such a long reach to get around. I would much rather use my smaller ones because they're far better quality, but this thing is absolute garbage. It just wants to keep falling apart on you. So I'm going to get that top open, hold the bottom up. What I could do is put a cable tie around there, but why should I? It's a bloody expensive tool. So get that under there, see the valve, so I'm actually on the valve, and then I can put that over the top and then literally just press down and it will go over center and hold it in place. Okay, so that's that. Now what I'm going to do is give it another couple of turns on here just to give me a bit more clearance, and then we can just drop our collets down in. Now I'm hoping, because the camera's on, this is going to go well, but if not, you'll see me edit a bit out. Now that one's gone straight in, so that's a good sign. Just drop that one in there. And you need eye protection on when you're doing this, because if these things fly out, they will come out at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Okay, so now they're stuck in there. It's unbelievable how easy they've gone in. I'm going to try and move the camera down so you can see down inside there. You can see those collets are in there. Bloody tripod's in the way. Okay, you can see they're down in there. So what I'll do now, I'll bring the camera a bit closer so you can see what's going on. What I'll do now is wind off a couple of turns, and then I can take that off. There we go, and that's that one in. And what I generally do then is go along and give them all a tap with the valves not on the bench, with the head on its side. Give them all a tap just to make sure it's seated. So because that went so well, we'll do another one for you. So we'll move the camera over here. Get that like that. That one probably, that is so unusual. Normally things go really bad when the camera's on, but that one went, that was the easiest one I've done so far. Probably because it's on the end of the head, it's easier with it to all the, what I can actually do is just dip that in the oil, can't I? There we go. Now I can look down in here. I can put the valve up through, give it a turn, lubricate the steel, push it through, drop the spring on, drop the retainer on, and then I've got my two little collets. I'll probably do it, I've got to put the bloody spring compressor on first. Duh. So we'll put the spring compressor up underneath, like so, down on the top. Get it centered if I can. And then just push that down. I'm going to give that a couple of turns just to get it back where we were. Just like so. Drop a collet down in there. That one's gone in. And then drop it down on that side. They're making this look too easy now. And then lift up slowly. There we go. As I say, make sure you wear safety glasses. If those jump out and it's coming out, it could fly off at any angle. So there we go. That's as easy as that. So that's how to do the head, and I'll see you in a minute when it's all done. And there we go, guys, all done. And what I do now, I just come along, hold the head up so that the valves aren't hitting the deck, and just give it a tap. Just make sure everything's seated. If there's anything in there or anything slightly off, just make sure they're seated. It's better than, if it's going to come out now, it's better to have it come out now than when it's actually in the engine and running. So that head is now ready to go back on. But first of all, we've got to do the oil pump and everything, and I've got to make sure this face is completely clean. I've checked it for flatness. I put it on the block. A lot of people would say that's not right because you're not checking the head for flatness. Well, I'm checking the head against the block. So if the block has got a twist in it, then I'll feel it on this if they've both got a twist in, then they're going to go together fine, you know what I mean? So, and I didn't have any head gasket problems or anything, so I'm not sort of too worried about it. But I did actually put it on there, and it has got a slight rock, and I've got about what I can get it in. I think it's this corner and this corner. If I hold this corner down, I can get like a 1.5 tooth-out feeler in here on this corner. I checked the spec, and the spec for bow across, well, diagonally and lengthways is 4 thou, so well within. I'm not going to worry about it, because over this area here, which is where the head gasket actually is, it's going to be a lot less. I'm talking right out over here, so I'm not really going to worry about 1.5 thou. It's going to be absolutely fine, especially with the thickness of the gasket. It's a hell of a thick gasket. So and that's another thing we'll talk about when we come to putting the head on, is the different gaskets and the thicknesses and everything, and how you determine which one you need. So there we go. So I'm going to call that a day for this video. It's been quite a short one, and it's also been filmed over like a week or two. So but we're all ready to go now. Head's all done, ports are all cleaned out. I haven't really done any porting work on this. I've just smoothed it out a little bit in the combustion area where it was very, very rough. Just literally just smoothed it out with a wire brush, really, just to take some of the roughness away from it. So there we go. I'll see you all soon. Just a little tip as well, something I'm finding that works on the chassis when you've got bolts like this where they've got a rusty head. If you go and buy new bolts, they'll just rust the same because they're the same. So what I do is clean them up with a wire brush, and then I give them a going over with this Hammerite Cure Rust. Where are we? Hammerite Cure Rust. They come out like that, and then you can give them a coat of silver paint or something, as you see me do on the chassis, and it seems to be resisting the weather pretty much. So there we go. Anyway, I'll see you all soon, guys. Thanks for watching, and next video we'll be putting the oil pump pack on. I'll show you how to set that up with the chain and everything, and then we'll probably look at getting the head on and going from there, and then on to cams and everything, and see where we go. Let's see how the weather goes. Had a nice day today. Well, a little bit of hailstones this morning, no wind though, and it stayed pretty much dry. Got a chance to take the Mustang out and meet a load of guys at Simply Mustangs UK today, so that was good. So yeah, all in all, good day. Have a couple of beers now. See you all soon. Bye for now.